Hi guys and girls, Emma again. Welcome back to the spare room. First thing, before we even get into this, I wanted to sort of explain here. I would love to have some wider shots, and I'd love to frame my shots a bit bigger, and I've had a few comments about that from several people actually, and I take that on board. But the width of my bench here, if you have a look, from if we move out here, the width of the bench here from the machine through to the corner is about 500 millimeters, and it's the same back this way. So there's enough room for me to stand here. So the basic truth is that I don't really have the space. Sad but true. It's really not going to happen. The lighting's a bit harsh here, and you might have to put up with some fairly close shots. I try all the time to get everything that I'm looking at in the camera frame. I'm looking at that screen all the time, but sometimes it misses, and you might have to live with that for a little while until we find something better. Anyway, time for a project. It's another new project, and there's quite a few happening, and this is a sort of a necessity thing. I've got a new milling machine. It's centec 2. It's got 3/8 T slots in it, which is probably the same as a Sherline and a lot of other little mini mills. I got a piece of steel the other night, and I cut out some T-nuts. That's as far as I got with them, but just proof of concept really. And I could go and buy a I could go and buy a hold down kit, and that's not a big deal either. They're only about 150 bucks, something like that. But at the moment, coming back from the States and all that sort of stuff, it's not going to happen. So I've got this book, which is Harold Hall's Model Engineers Workshop Projects. Awesome book, Workshop Practice Series, number 39. I bought this at Foyles in London back in November. Great book. It's got a chapter on low profile hold downs, and these might just be the thing to hold the vise down. Looking at these here, they've got a tapered wedge with a screw in it, and a grub screw that screws in from towards the underneath and lifts the T-slot up in the slot to keep it tight. So it's a pretty sleek, uniform sort of a design. The ones in this book are for a 9/16 T-slot, which is quite a lot bigger than my machine. So I've drawn these out, and they're not very big at all. They're sort of 11/16 tall and inch long, and 5/8 of an inch wide. Now I'm going to work in inches here for a couple of reasons on this project. Australians won't like me, but everyone in America uses imperial, and most of my measuring tools are imperial, and my machine's imperial. So for this job I'm going to make everything imperial, so you might have to live with that. I've got this bit of steel, which is just a bit of free machining. I think it's pretty soft stuff. It may be K1020, something like that. I won't know till I sort of get into it and start cutting it up. I think it's probably more like 12L14 or something like that. But it should be heaps big enough and good enough for this job. It's inch by inch, or 25.4 by 25.4, I think. We can get this out of the end if we cut pieces off that are 16 millimeters long, or 5/8 of an inch long, or a bit longer. So what I'm going to do is cut 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll mark them out and mark them nicely and cut them with a hacksaw, and then start to clean them up with the shaper. And I'm going to do most of this job with the shaper, so stand by for some action on the shaper. So I've done a quick job of marking them out. Pretty straightforward. I've marked them 20mm long so that there's enough distance if my saw cut doesn't quite clean up square. Now I've just used a Z square. It stands in Koski squares. Awesome layout tool. Just put him over there, slide him along, and of course Randy's scribe. Which, some product placement there, you'll have to live with that, but go and check out the channels. They're awesome guys. They're really, yeah, owe them a lot. So some product placement there. Next job's to chop these up. I'm going to do this off camera because it might take me 4 hours. No, it won't. It won't take me long with a hacksaw. I've got a good sharp new cobalt blade, so it won't take long in this stuff. I'm going to slice the 4 off and we'll have a bit more of a look. So there we go, we're 20 minutes later, we've got 4 little blocks. They're all a bit irregular, but they're all well oversized, so they'll clean up. I hope. They should clean up. It's probably the secret is to get the thinnest corner. Which is probably that one, and clean him up first. Now I've used the Z squares again just to set these up, and I haven't really got a decent parallel, so these are just sitting on a bit of tool steel, which is plenty good enough. So I've used the Z square to set these up, and because this square is a bit bigger than my vice jaws, and that's going to happen a bit, what I've done is I've found a starrett rule and little toolmaker's clamp and clamp that on there. So we've only got this much of the square. I can sit that on the jaw there and I can get this pretty well clamped up nice like that, and we're ready to go. That's sitting more or less on there, but it's nice and tight, so I don't think it's going to move. We've got a nice sharp tool there, I think. What I'm probably going to do is find a seat on a stool, stick my head in here, probably kick this back a little bit because it's probably about where it wants to be to get a bit of clearance under the back. Find the high spot here. And it's almost touching there. Let's just clean that corner up. I'm just going to go over them a bit at a time with a bit of cutting oil on them until they're all nice and flat, and we'll come back and have a bit of a look. It's pretty boring shape of work. Just a matter of going over them. They don't need a lot off them. They're within about 1 millimetre, so take them down till they clean up all over, and the 4 of them, and then we can start looking at marking them out and getting them to size. So that's the next job. So it got a bit late and I've got one side of these all cleaned up. I've actually lapped these, if you can see that, just with 400 wet and dry paper, carborundum paper. Once I got them right, and I mean they're easy enough to check, but there's no gap between them there, and there's no gap between them there, and they're all sort of pretty interchangeable and fairly nice. So they're all pretty square on the end. Careful setups and nice tight vise so they don't move. And a couple of them I've done again, or I've faced a couple of times to get them right. But I've got all these ends, we set them down, all the bottom faces looking pretty good. Next job is to cut them all to 5/8 of an inch, or 625 thou. That's not a huge job now. One face is all nice and square and parallel. It's a matter of cleaning them up, finding the, marking them at 5/8 with a line, and then I'm going to go nearly to it, and probably I'll set them all up again and do a finish cut all on the same setting so they don't move, with a nice sharp tool, and that way they should all be exactly the same height and exactly parallel to the other face, and that's really all we need to do. So let's clean the machine up. You'll notice that the angle grinder's never far away when I'm working with the hand shaper, because tools need to be sharp. Any small machine tool, and have friends with little lathes, and treadle lathes and machine tools like this shaper that are just a little bit, it's a nice solid machine, but it's a fairly light machine to be doing this sort of work with. So sharp tools are absolutely critical. Now I'm going to clean the machine up. I'm going to put some of these tools away again, and I'm going to look at some setups to get these somewhere near looking good. So I blued them up, and the height gauge out. Now the thing about these big Starrett height gauges is that they only go down to 1 inch. And this one actually now got a set of gauge blocks that is out about 3 thou, a fraction more than 3 thou. So whether I mess around and get that right at some point, I certainly probably will, but at the moment we know it's 3 thou high, so we can work with that. But I've set this at inch and 5/8, or inch 625 thousandths of an inch, which with an inch block here under the work, we can then scribe a line round here at where we need to be. Now we're only going to go down to somewhere near that line, within about 1 finish cut on all of these blocks, and then I'm going to finish them up all on the one setting with a nice sharp tool, just run over them, and hopefully they'll all be the same. That's the theory, rather than measure each one individually. So what are we waiting for? This vise is a bit old-fashioned in that it's got a bolt to hold down the jaw, and a thread to tighten it up. Capable of doing pretty good work, but you need to double check it and double check it and double check it to get it right. Eventually I'd like a little grinding vise set up on here of some sort, something super accurate and nice that I can use, but we're going to live with this for a bit. Some sort of parallel would be nice. It's a bit wider than that, but that's alright, because we know that this jaw here is pretty close to up and down, and when we clamp it down, this one is too. So we're going to live with that, and this should keep it nicely this way. It's probably not up to Stefan's standard, but we're going to get it somewhere near. So and I'm still using this because this stupid machine has all odd size bolts, and unfortunately I can't find a spanner to fit it. A project very soon will be to make a spanner to fit these and these, because I don't like using a shifter on this machine, and at this point that's what you sort of got to do. And it's a nice tight fit under there. We've got a nice sharp tool. We'll pull our tool forward so that just clear there. We've probably taken a fraction too much there, and we're going to break a tool. This machine's capable of taking quite a bit bigger cut than I'm doing at the moment, but you've only got to have a slight irregularity or a piece sticking up and you hit it and you break the tip off the tool, and you've got to start again with the sharpening. So I'm just going to take a bit at a time and get it down. Probably no need for you to see all of this, but when they're right through, we'll come back and we'll take the finished cuts. So anyway, I hope you can see that. We're down to about the last cut. I'm not taking a lot off here, probably 3 thou. It's not very much at all. Starting to cut there now. that's sort of stuff all, and we've got a reasonable sort of a finish there. I'll just check to see what sort of height we're at. We've got about another 2 thou I reckon we could take off, so we might just do that. Just as a finish. Spring cut. And that's about the last one. Spot on. Poor machine's a bit dirty. And that finish is nothing to write home about on that one. But they're all sort of somewhere near the same. I might spend some time now and just lap them all so that they're the same. They're within about half a thou I reckon, just with a micrometer. And take the high spots off some of them and just lap them up so that the high spots are gone. And so that they're something like the finish on the other side I've got. And have a bit of a look at them on the inspection plate. So just a sheet of plate glass there. This really wants some rubber feet on it. If I find some sticky rubber feet I might put them on there. I've got a couple of these glass tiles, so the moment it moves around a bit, probably some non-stick mat under it would be good. That's what Tom Lipton uses, and that's probably a smart thing to do. Anyway, we've got our 4 little blocks, and we've got a 0 to 1 micrometer. That one's a thou over. That one's about 3/4 of a thou over. That one's about 4 thou over. Not sure how that happened. And that one kind of happened a thou under. So the one that's 4 thou over, I'm going to put back in the machine, and I'm going to take another thou, a couple of thou off it. I'll probably take it at the same setting as I had it before. And that's sort of that to not too shabby. So some WD-40 on this plate. And just clean the finish up a bit. It isn't going to take very much, but I'm going to move the camera because it's in the way and all you're going to look at my back. And when I'm sort of happy with them, we'll have another look. So anyway, it's bedtime again. Another close shot because there's not enough room. These are within a couple of thou. I've sort of messed around with the indicator on the height gauge here, and they're not far out. The lowest one's about, lowest corner's about 4 thou under, and the highest corner's about 1.5 thou under. So that's plenty good enough for me. I don't know how flat they are or anything else, but they will get a bit more of a dress up before they're finished. And this dimension, while it's very helpful to have it right for machine setup and marking out, is really only the dimension that slides in the bottom of the T-slot. So it's not that critical. As long as it's just a fraction under, it'll be plenty good enough. So I'm pretty pleased with it, considering I've used a machine that's 110 years old and measuring equipment here that's 50 years old. There's a good old Pratt depth mic and a Starrett high gauge. And a Starrett micrometer, which may not be quite, might be the youngest thing here. Of course, Stan's squares, which are invaluable for work like this, or any sort of work in the workshop. And Randy's scribe. But apart from that, these really are well on the way to being, looking like they might be pretty good. I'm happy with them. I'm going to call this part finished and say good night, because it's getting a bit late and it's Friday night and I've still got to work tomorrow. But thanks for watching, and be kind to each other. More soon. I'll get on this week and do a bit more to these and get some video up. Next, I guess, is to take the tops off to whatever that dimension we decide. I think it's about 5'8". I'm still sort of looking at that. Take the tops off and start thinking about chopping these out for a T, so that it looks something like that all the way up. So a bit of work in them yet, but we're well on the way.